I'll show you what a naive little girl can do when she has forensic accounting on her side. That's what I told my uncle right before I exposed his 15 years of embezzlement in front of our entire staff. The look on his face when I projected those spreadsheets on the conference room wall, worth every sleepless night I'd spent building my case. He thought he owned that room until I owned him. It was a Tuesday morning in April when I returned to my family's manufacturing business after completing my MBA. Spring sunlight streamed through the lobby windows, catching dust motes and golden beams. The receptionist, Marion, who'd known me since I was a child running through these halls, jumped up to hug me. "Emma, look at you all grown up and back to save us." She laughed, but I caught something in her eyes, a flicker of genuine relief that seemed out of place for a routine homecoming. "Save you from what?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. She glanced around and lowered her voice. "Oh, you know how it's been. Tight budgets, layoffs last quarter. Your uncle keeps saying it's just market conditions, but..." She shrugged, leaving the thought unfinished. I nodded, filing away the information. My father had built this company from nothing before his death 5 years ago. When I left for business school, the company had been thriving. My uncle Robert, Dad's younger brother, had taken over as CEO with the understanding that I'd join leadership after completing my education. But something about Marion's words sent a chill through me. "Is he in?" I asked. "Oh yes, corner office now. He moved up there about 4 years ago." My father's office. That wasn't the plan. I made my way through the manufacturing floor, greeting longtime employees, many of whom seemed surprised to see me. "We thought you weren't starting until next month," one supervisor said. "Change of plans," I replied with a smile. In truth, I'd moved up my start date after a concerning call from our CFO, who'd retired suddenly last month. He'd been cryptic but insistent that I needed to take a close look at the books as soon as possible. The elevator doors opened to the executive floor, and I immediately noticed the changes. Expensive artwork on walls that my practical father had kept bare. New furniture that must have cost a fortune, and there, at the end of the hall, my uncle's name on my father's door. I heard him before I saw him, that booming laugh that always seemed a touch too loud, too performative. He was on the phone, feet up on my father's desk, a crystal tumbler of something amber beside his computer despite the early hour. "Emma," he exclaimed when he spotted me, quickly ending his call. He stood to embrace me, his cologne overwhelming. "We weren't expecting you for weeks." "Thought I'd surprise everyone," I said, returning his hug with a stiffness I couldn't quite hide. He held me at arm's length, studying me with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Look at you, the spitting image of your father. God, he'd be proud." He gestured around the office. "What do you think of the changes? Brought us into the modern era, don't you think?" I glanced at the Italian leather furniture, the expensive art, the bar cart in the corner that definitely hadn't been part of my father's austere workspace. "It's different. Different is good. This company needed shaking up." He guided me to a chair. "So, MBA from Wharton. Impressive. We'll have to find you something suitable to do around here." Something suitable? According to my father's succession plan, I was supposed to step in as COO with a clear path to CEO within 5 years. "I thought we'd already established my role," I said carefully. He waved his hand dismissively. "Plans change, Emma. The market's been tough. We've had to make adjustments. I'm thinking you could head up our marketing department. It would be perfect for a young woman with fresh ideas." Marketing? I'd specialized in operations and finance, just as my father had wanted, just as the company needed. "I'd like to see our financial statements first," I said. "Get a feel for where we stand before discussing my position." A flicker of something, annoyance? Worry? Crossed his face before his smile returned. Of course. Though I warn you, it's all very boring. Numbers never were your strong suit, as I recall." I'd graduated top of my class in finance, and he knew it. "I'll manage," I said coolly. He laughed too loudly. "That's the spirit. I'll have Diane send over some reports. Nothing too complex to start with." I spent the next week settling in, reconnecting with staff and receiving the sanitized financial reports Uncle Robert had approved. They told a story of a company struggling with market conditions and increased competition, yet somehow affording executive bonuses and lavish office renovations. The numbers didn't add up. I needed access to the real books. Late one evening, I found Diane, my uncle's executive assistant, alone in her office. She'd worked for my father for 20 years before Robert took over. "Can I ask you something off the record?" I said, closing her door. She glanced nervously at the ceiling, then wrote on a notepad. "Office bugged. Coffee tomorrow, 7 a.m., Riley's Diner." The next morning, over strong coffee in a booth far from other customers, Diane slid a USB drive across the table. "I've been keeping copies," she whispered. "Your father taught me to always keep backups of everything. When your uncle started changing access permissions and moving money, I kept backing things up." "Moving money?" She nodded grimly. "Shell companies, fake vendors, inflated expenses. He's been bleeding the company dry for years." My coffee turned bitter in my mouth. "How much?" "Millions. At least 12, maybe more. $12 million. My father's legacy, the company he'd built from nothing, the inheritance he'd left for me to steward, all being siphoned away by his own brother." Why didn't you say something sooner? Diane's eyes filled with tears. He threatened my job, my pension. I'm 3 years from retirement, Emma. And when I hinted to the board that they should look closer at the books, he told them I was getting confused, that my age was affecting my work. They believed him because... She trailed off. Because he's a man in a suit, I finished for her. She nodded. But you're Thomas's daughter? You can stop him? I spent the next 3 weeks working nights in my apartment, poring over the real financial records. I created spreadsheets tracking every fraudulent transaction, every fake vendor, every inflated expense report. I followed the money to offshore accounts and real estate purchases in my uncle's name. Properties in the Bahamas, a yacht, a condo in Manhattan, all purchased with company funds through an elaborate network of shell companies. During the day, I played the part of the dutiful niece, accepting the marketing position temporarily while I gathered more evidence. I reached out to our old CFO, who confirmed my findings and agreed to provide a sworn statement. I contacted our company's former accounting firm, which Robert had fired and replaced with his golf buddy's smaller operation. They still had records that didn't match the official books. I was building a case, brick by brick, document by document. Then came the day of my public humiliation. I'd requested to present some marketing ideas at the monthly staff meeting. My uncle agreed readily enough, probably expecting some naive suggestions he could shoot down to establish dominance. Instead, I prepared a presentation on financial transparency in marketing materials. Nothing directly accusatory, but pointed enough that anyone with something to hide might get nervous. As I began my presentation, I noticed my uncle shifting uncomfortably in his seat. When I mentioned the importance of honest representation of company performance, he interrupted. I think we're getting off topic here, Emma. This isn't a finance meeting. I smiled pleasantly.
I'm just establishing the ethical framework for our marketing approach. Let's stick to actual marketing ideas, he said sharply. Unless you don't have any? I have plenty, I continued, clicking to my next slide showing competitor analysis.
But I think it's important we understand our true market position first. He stood abruptly. I think what Emma's trying to say, in her inexperienced way, is that she needs more time to develop concrete ideas. He turned to me, his smile tight. This is why I suggested you shadow the department first, before trying to lead it. I felt heat rise in my cheeks, but kept my expression neutral. I've been analyzing our position carefully, Uncle Robert. Analysis is an action, Emma. He chuckled, looking around the room at my colleagues. This is the problem with business school graduates. All theory, no practical experience. Several people laughed nervously. I'm just trying to understand where the money's going, I said evenly. Something flashed in his eyes, a warning. The money is going exactly where it needs to go, which is something you'd understand if you had any real-world experience running a business this size. I opened my mouth to respond, but he cut me off. Everyone, I think we need to remember that Emma is still finding her footing here. She's a smart girl. Woman, he corrected himself with a condescending smile, but she's still learning. Let's not mistake enthusiasm for expertise. The room fell uncomfortably silent. I felt every eye on me, waiting to see how I'd respond to being so publicly undermined. You're right, I said finally. I am still learning. About all sorts of things. He seemed pleased by my apparent surrender and moved on to the next agenda item. But as the meeting continued, he couldn't resist twisting the knife further. Before we wrap up, he announced, I want to address some rumors I've heard about financial concerns. I know Emma's been asking questions about our accounting practices. Heads turned toward me again. I want to assure everyone that our finances are sound. We've weathered some market challenges, yes, but we're stable. Anyone suggesting otherwise, he looked pointedly at me, is simply showing their naivety about business cycles and cash flow management. He smiled broadly. I don't blame Emma for being concerned. Her father left big shoes to fill. And she's just a girl trying to understand a complex business. But maybe leave the financial worrying to those of us with experience, A few people chuckled. I saw pity in some eyes, discomfort in others. Diane, sitting in the corner, looked down at her notepad, her face flushed with secondhand embarrassment for me.
Just a naive little girl, he repeated, shaking his head with mock fondness. Just like your mother, all heart, no head for business. That was the moment. That reference to my mother, who had actually been a brilliant business strategist before cancer took her, made something crystallize inside me. I wouldn't just expose him, I would destroy him. I nodded meekly and gathered my papers, playing the part of the chastised niece. But inside, I was ice cold with resolve. That night, I called a forensic accountant I'd met during my MBA program. I called in every favor, spent money I'd saved for a down payment on a house, and accelerated my timeline. I needed a complete audit, and I needed it fast. Over the next month, I became the perfect compliant niece. I stopped asking financial questions. I focused on marketing as instructed. I laughed at my uncle's jokes and accepted his patronizing mentorship. All while my team of external experts worked through the evidence Diane and I had collected. When the forensic accountant confirmed my findings and added several fraudulent schemes I hadn't even discovered, I took the final step. I contacted the 3 board members who had been most loyal to my father. I showed them enough evidence to concern them without overwhelming them with details. I asked for one thing, a special all-hands meeting where I could present a comprehensive marketing strategy that would address our current challenges. They agreed, overriding my uncle's objections. The meeting was set for the following Monday. The weekend before, I barely slept. I rehearsed my presentation until I could deliver it in my sleep. I organized my evidence in clear, irrefutable exhibits. I prepared USB drives with complete documentation for each board member. Monday morning arrived crisp and clear. I dressed with care, a charcoal suit my father had always said made me look like a CEO, pearl earrings that had been my mother's, hair pulled back in a simple professional style. No flash, no distractions from what I was about to present. I arrived early to set up the conference room. Diane helped me connect my laptop to the projector and place folders at each board member's seat. "Are you sure about this?" she whispered. "He'll fight back hard." "Let him try," I said, checking the presentation one last time. People began filing in. The board members, department heads, staff representatives, and finally my uncle striding in confidently with his executive team trailing behind him. "Quite the turnout for a marketing presentation," he remarked, eyeing the room. "I hope it's worth pulling everyone away from their actual work." "I believe it will be," I said pleasantly. He took his seat at the head of the table naturally. I remained standing near the projector. "Thank you all for coming," I began. "As you know, I was asked to develop a marketing strategy to address our company's current financial situation." My uncle nodded encouragingly, already looking slightly bored. "Before I present that strategy, I think it's important we all have a clear understanding of exactly what situation we're trying to address." I clicked to my first slide, a simple company logo. Simpson Manufacturing was founded by my father 30 years ago with a commitment to quality, integrity, and transparency. I clicked to the next slide, a graph showing company growth until 5 years ago, then a steady decline. Since my father's death, our company has faced what we've been told are market challenges and increased competition. My uncle shifted in his seat, his expression darkening. "However," I continued, clicking to the next slide showing 2 sets of financial statements side by side, "I've discovered that our challenges have a different source." "Emma," my uncle interrupted, "this isn't a financial presentation. You're supposed to be talking about marketing." "I'm establishing context," I replied calmly. "You can't market effectively without understanding the true state of the business." I turned back to the screen. "These are our official financial statements from the past 5 years." I pointed to the left side. "And these," I pointed to the right, "are the actual financials, reconstructed from original records, vendor confirmations, and bank statements." The room had gone completely silent. I could feel my uncle's glare, but I didn't look at him. The discrepancy between these 2 sets of numbers is approximately $12.8 million over 5 years. I clicked to the next slide showing a complex web of transactions. This money was diverted through a series of shell companies, fake vendors, and inflated expenses to accounts and assets controlled by one person. Now I turned to look directly at my uncle. "Would you like to explain this, Uncle Robert, or should I continue?" His face had drained of color, but he recovered quickly, forcing a laugh. "This is absurd. You've clearly misunderstood some complex financial maneuvers. This is exactly why I said you weren't ready for a financial role." "I don't think I've misunderstood anything," I said, clicking to the next slide. "This is a statement from Martin Greaves, our former CFO, detailing how you pressured him to falsify reports and redirect funds. When he refused certain transactions, you forced him into early retirement. Martin was becoming confused in his old age," my uncle snapped. "These accusations are libelous." "Then perhaps you can explain these," I said, clicking again to show a series of property deeds. A beach house in the Bahamas, a Manhattan apartment, and a yacht, all purchased through Oceanic Holdings, LLC, which traces back to you personally, paid for with company funds classified as vendor payments to non-existent suppliers. Murmurs spread through the room. The board chairman, James Wilson, leaned forward. "Robert, is this true?" "Of course not!" my uncle exploded, standing now. "This is a vindictive attempt by my niece to seize control of the company. She's fabricated all of this because she's angry I didn't hand her the COO position the minute she walked in with her fancy degree." I remained calm. "I haven't fabricated anything. In fact, I've had all of this independently verified by a forensic accounting firm." I handed out the USB drives to the board members. "Everything is documented here, including bank transfers, property records, and statements from former employees who were fired when they questioned certain transactions." My uncle's face had turned from white to red. "This is a setup. She's manipulated the records." "That would be quite a feat," I said, considering many of these records come directly from banks and county clerk offices. I clicked to another slide showing emails between my uncle and his personal accountant discussing how to clean company money for personal use. "Where did you get those?" he demanded, voice rising. "Those are private communications." "They were on the company server," I said. "You really shouldn't conduct personal business using your company email account." The board members were flipping through the printed materials I'd provided, expressions growing increasingly grave. "Robert," the chairman said quietly, "I think you need to address these allegations directly.
My uncle looked around the room, seeming to realize he was losing his audience. His strategy shifted. Look, there may have been some creative accounting. Every CEO does it. The company was struggling after Thomas died. I needed to project strength, maintain our image in the industry. By buying yourself a yacht? I asked. Company asset, he muttered. For entertaining clients. Registered in your name personally? I countered. Along with the Bahamas property and the Manhattan apartment, neither of which have ever been used for company business according to our travel and entertainment records. He turned to the board members, appealing directly to them now. James, Paul, Richard, you know me. We've worked together for years. Are you really going to let this naive little girl waltz in and destroy everything we've built? There it was again, that phrase. I clicked to my final slide, a photo of my father at the company's 25th anniversary celebration, arm around a younger me. My father built this company, I said quietly. He trusted you to protect it until I was ready to take my place here. Instead, you stole from it. You stole from him. You stole from me. And you stole from every employee in this room who's faced layoffs, benefit cuts, and salary freezes while you lived like a king on money that wasn't yours. I turned to face the room fully. I'm not a naive little girl. I'm Thomas Simpson's daughter, and I have the education, the evidence, and the determination to set this right. The silence that followed was deafening. Then from the back of the room, someone started to clap. Others joined in, the applause spreading until almost everyone was on their feet. My uncle looked around wildly, seeing his support evaporate before his eyes.
This isn't over, he hissed at me. You think you can just walk in here and take over? I built this company into what it is today. You nearly destroyed it, I corrected him. And yes, it is over. I turned to the board chairman. I've taken the liberty of drafting a resolution for the board's consideration, removing Robert Simpson from all positions and freezing his access to company accounts pending a full investigation. I've also prepared the necessary documentation for law enforcement should you choose to pursue criminal charges. The chairman nodded grimly. We'll need to discuss this immediately. Robert, I think you should leave the premises while the board convenes. You can't do this, my uncle shouted, his composure completely gone now. This company would be nothing without me. Nothing. 2 security guards appeared at the door. I'd arranged that detail in advance as well. Ms. Simpson, one of them said. Should we escort Mr. Simpson out? My uncle looked at me, hatred burning in his eyes. You'll regret this, he said quietly. You're not half the business person your father was. You'll run this company into the ground within a year. I met his gaze steadily. Maybe, but at least I'll do it honestly. As the guards led him away, I turned back to the room. I know this is shocking, and there will be challenges ahead as we sort through the financial damage. But I promise you this. From today forward, Simpson Manufacturing will return to the principles my father founded it on: quality, integrity, and complete transparency. The aftermath was both simpler and more complex than I'd anticipated. The board voted unanimously to remove my uncle and install me as interim CEO. The financial untangling took months. Forensic accountants, lawyers, banks, and eventually prosecutors all became part of our daily operations. We recovered about 60% of the stolen funds. My uncle avoided jail time by agreeing to surrender properties and assets, though the legal proceedings dragged on for over a year. His reputation was destroyed in the industry. No small consolation. Rebuilding the company was harder. We had to let go several executives who had been complicit in the fraud. We restructured departments, renegotiated with suppliers who had been shortchanged, and worked to restore employee trust through profit sharing and improved benefits. Diane became my chief of staff, her institutional knowledge proving invaluable. The former CFO returned as a consultant to help straighten out our books. Slowly, month by month, we clawed our way back to stability. 1 year after that fateful meeting, I called everyone together again in the same conference room. This time, I presented real financial statements showing our first quarter of growth in 5 years. Modest growth, but growth nonetheless. This is just the beginning, I told them. We've spent a year cleaning up the past. Now we can focus on the future. After the meeting, I went to my office, my father's old office, which I'd restored to its original simplicity. The expensive art and furniture were gone, replaced by practical, comfortable pieces that reminded me of how my father had run things. On my desk sat a small wooden box my father had always kept on his. Inside were the business cards of every employee who had ever worked for Simpson Manufacturing. His way of remembering that people, not profits, were the heart of his company. I opened the box and added a new card to the collection, my own, reading Emma Simpson, Chief Executive Officer. We did it, Dad, I whispered to the empty room. Your company is safe now. As I closed the box, my phone buzzed with a text from our head of sales. A major new client had just signed a contract, our biggest in 3 years. I smiled. Not just a naive little girl, after all.